Green. I'm your host, Debbie Klughers, and I have with me today Mr. Christopher Gervais. He is the founder and president of Wildlife Conservation Film Festivals that you show all over this beautiful country of ours.
We do. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming out, Chris.
We
nice
have
to meet you.
our second annual Hamptons Wildlife Conservation Film Festival, which will be here in the Hamptons in September.
In Sag Harbor.
In Sag Harbor at the Bay Street Theater. Last year we had a very successful event, and we're very happy to be back again this year and hope this is something we can do for many years to come. In addition to the one here in the Hamptons, we also host the National Wildlife Film Festival just outside of Washington, D.C. We'll be doing one in Miami in the second week of February, the Miami Wildlife Conservation Film Festival.
Very nice.
And we also host the Rocky Mountain Wildlife Conservation Film Festival.
We're all over the place.
Which is in Denver, yes. So the goal is to do about 6 a year, one every 2 months. And they're, of course, in different parts of the country. And for the most part, different films are shown at each film festival. And when we can, we bring the speakers, the director and producers of some of the films there to talk to the audience and get their message across about why they made their film, how they can protect that particular species and habitat that the film's about, and then do a Q&A with the audience. And people always seem to enjoy that a great deal.
That's wonderful. How do you get your filmmakers to...
Through a variety of means. A lot of it is researching on the internet, looking for filmmakers who...
You look for them.
I do. I look for them. I'm also fortunate that sometimes they find us. A lot of it is word of mouth. The first year is challenging, like any other thing that is new when you're just starting out. Not everyone knows about you.
Right.
But now that we're into our second year,
You've got a nice website. You've got a presence on Facebook.
We're on Facebook. We just created the Facebook page. We're hoping to get something established on LinkedIn eventually. But yeah, filmmakers are like a lot of other people. They talk with each other and they know what events they should go to, and they'll recommend which film festivals they feel are the best way to get their message out, and which film festival producers are the best to work with. And we like to think we're in that bracket, and we're fortunate that a lot of the filmmakers we worked with last year want to return this year, or perhaps in a year or two when they produce their next film. The challenge is that a lot of the filmmakers we work with do not produce a film every year. Sometimes it may take every 2 or 3 years between films that they produce. But they know other people in the industry, and that's how we were fortunate this year. We've gotten, I think, close to, almost at this point, 475 films that have been submitted.
For the Hamptons?
For just the Hamptons alone.
And you take a variety. You take students, documentaries, you take things that deal with specific species or specific habitats. I mean, so you really have a variety of options for people.
We have about 10 categories, and they range from student filmmakers to endangered species, to humans and nature. We even have one category for music and nature. There's categories for particular ecosystems, and anyone can submit a film to that particular category or several categories, and we will have an award for each of those categories, and we try to include as many people as we can. I will never turn a film down in the sense that I'm always happy to review someone's film. Sometimes I have a stack of films of 40 to 50 on my desk, and it may take me several weeks to get through them all. It's challenging. But I'll never tell anyone, no, I'm too busy and I will not look at your film.
What got you interested in, I mean, this is a big venture just to decide, I'm going to show wildlife conservation films all over the country and invite you have international filmmakers.
We do. We have films.
How did you get into this?
It's a long story, but I'll try to summarize it for you. Several years ago, I was having breakfast with 2 very dear friends, Dr. Sylvia Earle. Oh,
I love Sylvia Earle. I've met her twice. She's amazing.
Great person. One of the world's greatest marine biologists.
Can you get her on my show?
I'll ask.
Let's work. She knows me.
Okay.
That would be wonderful.
Well, we're hoping to have her come out, if not this year, perhaps maybe
to the Hamptons?
2012 for our film festival, and I'm sure she'd be happy to be on your TV show. The other person who I was meeting with that morning was Jim Fowler, the former host of Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Wow!
And at the
these
time,
are the big guys.
They're the big gal and the big guy, two very influential people in wildlife conservation.
Why not?
And
start at the top.
Not strangers to television, and they've always been dear friends for a number of years. They've served as mentors. And at the time, I was out of work, and I was thinking about what can I do? And there's an old saying, do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And
so true.
I had just come from a film festival across country, which showed some wildlife films. And
Was it a purely wildlife film festival, or just
it's a combination of wildlife and environmental.
Nice.
And I said to myself, yeah, it's a shame there's nothing like this on the Eastern Seaboard. And there are certainly a lot of environmental film festivals. And people say, well, they're one and the same. And no, they're not. Environmental film festivals, at least the ones I've been to, they have a very important message. There's no
Right.
question about that.
usually like a problem, a
Well,
solution?
they'll talk about clean air, clean water,
Yeah.
agriculture, food
Sure.
production,
Yep.
wastewater management
Yep.
treatment, and they're all
Great.
extremely important
Very
issues.
important.
Whereas my film festivals are specifically on wildlife, a
Yeah, I
particular
think there's a lot of
species.
children interested, I think, because kids love
We do,
animals.
and we
Yeah.
actually have some films that are geared for younger children. We have a few films this year that were submitted by actually a young lady who works at the Harvard University School for Public Health. I hope she'll be here in September, but her one film is geared for, I would say, probably elementary, middle school, and high
That's
school
great.
students.
Get them when
So-
they're little.
Well, that's the whole idea, is if you get people hooked on to the green movement, to the environmental movement, to conservation when they're young, then they'll follow through that with the rest of their life. I'm sort of an example of that. I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau Sunday
we
nights on
all did.
PBS. And to answer your question, how I got involved with this, I've always been involved with this, I guess. I've always worked as a volunteer, either at a zoo or a natural history museum or a wildlife refuge. And as I got older, instead of volunteering, I did fundraising, or I did work in other forums. And one thing just led to another, and I always had a passion for it since I was yay high. And here we are today.
Wonderful. Good idea.
Thank you. We have some films that I brought with me,
Me too.
and I like to show a couple clips. And we have one film which was actually submitted by Everett Vanderboos. He's an exceptionally talented wildlife filmmaker. He's been in the business now for probably 30 years, and he's produced over 300 wildlife documentary films. He will be traveling here in September. He's coming in from the
Wonderful.
Netherlands,
Wow.
and he'll be showing, I think, 4 films this September, but the one we have is called Crocs of Keepin.
Okay.
And if we could perhaps pop that in, we'll
Roll
show a minute or two of that.
Crocs of Keepin.
Crocs of
Where's
Keepin.
And this
Keepin?
mother share a small home and a huge challenge, raising their young in a dangerous world. One more challenge. Once a year, their home disappears. To survive, she retreats to a unique refuge, where she'll face impossible odds and heartbreaking loss. But the worst of times will bring out her best and cast a whole new light on a very old animal.
Very nice. Where is Keepin? Because I don't want to go there. I don't like crocodiles.
Keepin is in East Africa.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful film in many ways. One, the
Beautiful.
the stunning photography, cinematography is excellent, the sound is excellent, but also the message is excellent, that life is hard in the wild, and some people say nature is brutal and it's cruel. The struggle that the crocodiles endure is amazing. Also, you see the hippos too, that life is certainly not easy for them. Crocodiles, crocodilians, the entire family, are remarkable because they have been around before the dinosaurs. They have existed on this earth for over 250 million years. So they're obviously doing something right to be around that long. And there are times when the habitat they live in Africa, the river will dry up and there'll be absolutely no water. They'll just be living in mud, perhaps, sometimes for weeks or a month or more. but yet they endure, they survive. And that's just one challenge they face, the elements of nature. And there are other challenges that they're facing now in East Africa. Recently, there's poaching and hide, and of course, people sometimes collect the eggs. There's also threats due to pollution, and most recently, one of the countries in Africa was considering building an actual industrial highway across the Serengeti, which would have affected migratory patterns for millions of animals, wildebeest and zebra.
As much as I don't like the crocodiles, I know they play an important role in the ecosystem, and
they're a keystone species as a predator, and as a scientist, when we have seen predators removed from an ecosystem,
everything goes
it can
crazy.
wreak havoc. And an example, out here, you have such a problem with deer population because you have no predators. And same thing with turkey. There's really nothing out here that can predate upon them. Another example, not
Except
around
for man.
Except for man. But one classic example of how a predator removed from the habitat, wreaking ecological havoc, was Yellowstone National Park. When wolves were removed and bear population was very low, deer populations exploded.
They ate all.
And what that did was it ate
green.
all the natural vegetation, and particularly around the rivers and the streams. And what you saw is not just the vegetation disappear, but you saw less amphibians, less reptiles. You saw fewer
Everything that
insects.
depended on all of those.
You saw fewer birds because everything depended on each other. And as the deer removed native trees and shrubs and grasses or
Kind
ate
of a
the
little
seeds,
collapse going on.
you had a collapse of the ecosystem. When wolves were reintroduced back into
Very quickly.
it was
everything
really
came
quite
back.
amazing how quickly the natural habitat was restored.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the wolf population that increased, but they've seen population increase of native frogs, of native
the
toads,
birds,
and birds that will be around that
No,
particular.
that's a perfect example for people to look at. It's a very simple. It
It
wasn't
is.
so difficult to figure it out or to figure out how it
Well,
came
you
back.
know, sometimes the very easiest solution is the most simplest, and nature does not always need our intervention. If you just leave nature alone, it is resilient and it will take its own course. There are times when we have affected nature so severely that we do have to step in and intervene to undo the damage that we've done.
That's true. Chris, you also brought some photographs from some of the films.
I did. We have a little a collage. I guess we made it into a little PowerPoint, little slideshow of some of the films that we're showing in September. And if we can show that,
And you can talk right over them when they come up and to kind of explain what we're going to be
Absolutely.
looking at. And there's a quite a famous character in one of these
there is
photos.
there's a famous character.
Beam me up, Scotty. Why don't we see if we could check out that film? Here we go.
I think
Here we
we're-
go.
I
We've
think-
got,
there we go.
who's that? What kind of bird is that?
That is an eagle from one of our films, Living in the Amazon. That is a sloth, also found in the Amazon, a three-toed sloth.
Are these from different films? Or?
These three, this is a taper. These three are from one film called Living in the Amazon, but we
Okay.
actually have three parts of that film.
Okay.
Again,
More Amazon?
more macaws
Beautiful.
from the Amazon. We have three films living in the Amazon. Each is a different part. Each film is 45 minutes long, and
Was
they'll
the
be
same filmmaker?
same filmmaker, Christian Baumeister from Germany.
What kind of
That is an
cetacean is
That is an
that?
Amazon river dolphin,
Wow.
and you can
They're
see
pretty
it's-
rare, I've heard.
They're getting rarer. That is a cassowary, which is a flightless bird from the northern part of Australia, up in Queensland.
And a different film, obviously.
Different film, which that film is actually cassowary. This film here is bringing elephants back into the wild, featuring Asian elephants, separate film. And then we have the whale shark hunters, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Starring William
briefly.
Shatner.
Starring William Shatner, and that is William Shatner up there on the deck with the director and producer, Aaron Combs, who will be coming here in September. And
Now
that's-
look at this woman swimming with that giant shark. She in any danger?
No, she's not.
Can we hold this, guys? Just hold this for a minute, this slide, while we talk over it.
You know, whale sharks are, in fact, the size of whales. They are 60 feet long, and they are Yes, a shark, but they're not.
They have no teeth.
I believe they have very small teeth, but to the point where it's not a jagged, razor-edged, sharp tooth like you would see in a great white or a mako or tiger shark. There's never been any incident reported where they've harmed a person. And they mainly eat krill, or small fish. They're filter feeders. They're very gentle. You'll see people swimming with them, as Erin is doing. And that actually is not a fully grown whale shark.
No.
That's about an 18-foot long. If you scuba dive or you snorkel, there are opportunities to go to some resorts, whether it's off Roatan in Honduras or
Right, they
northern
take you there,
Australia, and they know where the whale sharks congregate. And they're shy animals.
Now, the purpose of this movie was to bring to attention...
The purpose of this movie was to bring attention the plight of whale sharks being hunted for their fins. And
Can we go to the next slide, please?
And you'll see that there. And at the next slide, you'll actually see fins of whale sharks that have been cut off. Unfortunately, many shark species now are on the verge of collapse simply because their fins are being cut off for shark fin soup.
It's an Asian delicacy.
It's an Asian delicacy. It's mysticism. People believe it has...
It's status, because it's like $100 a bowl.
In some cases, I've heard it actually can be even more, perhaps $250 or $300 a bowl.
And it's weddings. They serve this to show...
Last year we had a film that actually...
Here's a top secret. It's not so top secret at all.
That's Home for the Hawksbill. That's a film that was done in conjunction with the Nature Conservancy and the filmmakers Jordan Plotsky. And some baby hawksbills coming out of the sand, making their way to the ocean. And that is a shot from Crocs of Kantuma, two bull hippos, not in the best of moods, and it's something I want to get involved with. And a family of Asian elephants, very social animals, very family-oriented.
This sounds interesting.
This is a great film. This is about a gentleman who is an illiterate peasant farmer from West Africa who essentially turned a plot of land that was desert into a thriving forest, part of which he farmed, part of it was just that he restored natural habitat.
And he intuitively felt this need, or?
He felt that he would do this because it was just necessary. He took it upon himself. He received recognition from not only his country, but also the United Nations.
Wow.
And the message here is that if one man can do this,
Wow.
imagine what an entire community or an entire nation can do. And over the years, he essentially put together a 40-acre patch of forest in almost an entirely desert.
This was a number of years ago that he started this.
This was a number of years ago that he started, but the project still continues.
That's great.
And this film has not been shown here before in the Hamptons. We did show this film at our film festival in Washington, D.C. last year. The audience enjoyed it immensely, and even though it's not about a particular species, it's about a habitat.
Sure.
And you can certainly
And
see
within that habitat?
And within that habitat, you will find species. And I think the audience will find this film fascinating. And that's the gentleman right there. I wish we could bring him to this country, but that won't be possible.
Very nice.
And then we get back to the beginning. But getting back to the whale shark film, Erin, and we actually have a clip of that, if we could stick that in just a moment. Erin Calms, the director and producer of Whale Sharks Hunters, her message was to show the world the plight of whale sharks, how they're being slaughtered for their fins. And again, we've seen shark fin soup for $250, $300 a bowl at weddings.
And the worst thing is it's not like they're catching the shark for other purposes and using the meat or this or that. They're catching the shark, slicing off the fins, and most of the time returning the animal to the sea alive. Where it suffers greatly, it floats down to the bottom, and it's a grueling...
They bleed to death, and if they do not bleed to death, they'll just drown or they'll die of starvation.
I mean, it's just really useless. And there's laws against this type of activity. I mean...
There are. Some countries enforce their laws greatly.
Right.
Others are facing so many economic problems or other challenges that laws are only good if they're enforced. Whale sharks, since they're a much larger animal, I believe, will use the meat for other purposes. But as you mentioned, the smaller sharks, no, it's cutting the fins off, throwing back alive. But through Erin's film, she was actually able to work with a number of countries in Southeast Asia,
wonderful.
where now whale shark hunting is banned. It is now legal, and this is a great example of how this filmmaker was able to change policy.
And I think her message is important because a lot of times people don't know, the community doesn't know what's going on, and when they find out, they're not too happy.
It was amazing how many people did not know that this animal was living off their coastline, was living off their waters.
And being killed in such a horrific manner.
And again, ecotourism is, people will say, well, we need the money, we need to hunt.
We need to just look.
We need to look. There's so many examples where preserving a species or preserving an ecosystem, in fact, brought a particular community or a village more money in ecotourism.
Or a country like Australia.
Or a country.
Their ecotourism with their marine reserves is outstanding.
I mean, there are some countries where they primarily rely on ecotourism, both with their rainforests, their terrestrial species, or their coral reefs.
So if they conserve these species, they can help themselves and help
absolutely.
the planet. Maybe we can check out that.
Yeah, if we can pop in
that clip.
a few minutes of the whale shark hunters, I think.
There he is right now. He's waiting for him.
He's waiting. Okay.
What an extraordinary moment for me in my life. These animals are so benign. They are so friendly. They are so open to communication.
We enter the water in the shark's domain. It's only the name shark that scares you, and to kill them without knowing anything about them is reckless. There are too many people who want to taste the shark fin soup, and there aren't enough sharks to go around. These whale sharks are part of the web of life, and when you break that web of life, that web begins to unravel, and it affects everything connected with life. And that's us, folks.
Film.
It's going to be a great film. It has a great message. It'll be shown here in September, and I do not need to mention who's the star of the film. Someone I've enjoyed watching on TV all my life, but William Shatner,
That's great.
Captain Kirk,
He gets
is
the
the star of the film.
best jobs. How does he get to
I
do
wish
that?
I had his life. It's a great film. The filmmaker, Ann Combs, is an exceptionally talented filmmaker, and she's also, I believe, a professional windsurfing athlete. She'll actually be out here for
Multi-talented.
several weeks. She's coming for a surfing competition the week before the film festival, and she'll be staying here in the Hamptons. So maybe we can have her back on your show.
That would be
while
great.
she's here
would
in
be
between the two
great.
events. But getting to the shark fin soup, one of the films we showed last year was a PSA, promotional, and it was Yao Ming. I believe he just announced he's retiring from the Houston Rockets, but the former NBA star, he was in a wedding in China, where he is from, and they served shark fin soup at the wedding, and he refused it. And the bride and the groom...
That's a real diss.
It is.
To refuse that.
And the bride and groom were initially insulted. They were not happy that he was refusing their meal, and he spoke to them about it. And from my understanding, if I heard correctly, the entire wedding party, and there was over 100 guests, after they heard him speak, all of them refused to eat their
Because
soup.
they just don't know. It's just a cultural thing, and they just do it as a...
From my understanding, it's not very tasty.
No, it doesn't taste like anything.
There's no nutritional
They
value
have to
it.
add spices and stuff to make it taste.
It has no medicinal value.
Nope.
It's not an aphrodisiac. And as Mr. Shatner said, there are not enough sharks. It's estimated that there are well over 100 million sharks killed annually for shark finning. And that's
And
what
then
we,
not to mention bycatch
and that's what we know
other
of.
types of
It's-
fisheries.
It
Yeah.
could be double that amount killed, that's not reported. And of
Sharks
course,
are misunderstood.
well, they are the keynote species of the
Keystone
oceans,
species,
and
they
a
are.
keystone. Thank you. And if sharks disappear from the oceans, I mean, the ocean's already in enough trouble as it is. We've seen several species of fish that are actually no longer commercially viable to harvest because the
Commercially
populations are
extinct.
so low. We see problems in the ocean now where there's something called the plastic sea in the South Pacific. There is a patch of the ocean that is the size of the state of Texas, which is just filled with debris, plastic bottles,
50
plastic
years
bags,
ago. I mean-
from perhaps dating back decades. And it's not just clogging the shipping lanes, but of course, sea turtles will eat plastic bags. They'll think it's jellyfish.
Chris, you and I are on the
it's-
same page.
And what's unfortunate is that microorganisms will eat the plastic, which are eaten by small fish, eaten by larger fish, which may be consumed eventually by us. So in essence, we're eating
What
the
goes
plastic.
around comes around. Yeah.
Everything comes full circle.
Yeah.
So, and now we're starting to see plastic seas in other oceans too, in the Atlantic, in the
North
Indian Ocean.
Southern Atlantic, they found a new one.
And it's not just oil being dumped into the oceans. It's not just
And these
chemicals.
plastics have inherent properties that are not good. They have synthetic estrogens. They
Yes.
absorb PCBs and they leach PCBs. I mean, it's a whole slew of issues.
It's not
so
just a plastic bottle floating in the ocean. There's a lot more
there's
to
a lot
it than
more
that.
going on.
And
Yeah.
for years, we just considered the oceans as a garbage dump, and we dumped everything in there. And
Solution to pollution was dilution.
Yes.
But kind of got to move on from
we're
that.
seeing the problem. So are we showing another film here? Or?
We're wrapping it up, so if you have any
okay.
last,
What I'd like to
message for the
basically,
viewers?
we have our film festival September 23rd, 24th, and 25th at the Bay Street Theater here in Sag Harbor. And if people want to come to that, they can contact the theater. They can visit our website, which is www.wildlifefilmfestivals.com. We'll have the schedule of films with a synopsis of each film, and people can read what the films are about and see the length and who's the star in it.
Wonderful.
And if they have any other questions, if they want to volunteer for the film festival,
well, that's good.
we have a great core group of volunteers.
Kids can do some community service for
We'll probably
high
have maybe
school?
some school kids this year design our
Wonderful.
poster for us
Wonderful.
for this year, and we're hoping to go out into the schools a day or two before the film festival is actually in the theater and show some of the films there, and maybe have some of our other filmmakers that are coming into town
Wonderful.
speak to some of the school groups in the area.
And I'm sure you'll be doing some advertising, and we'll
We're going
get
to be
this
doing
thing
we're gonna be
going.
doing a lot of advertising. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much for having me.
coming.
I appreciate that.
No problem.